Alright everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Interstellar Odyssey, or Space Quest, one of the two. I still am indecisive as to what I should name it in the end. However, we are now in episode 3, and as you can probably see by the title and or the voluptuous thumbnail, we are heading out to the Mun. And what better way to do so than 4 times building speed? That is probably incoherent due to YouTube's processing parameters. However, I wanted to speed up the building process because some of you don't like to see building and some of you do, and nevertheless, I like to show my building here and there, even if it's at a very fast and probably incoherent speed, much like this launch actually. Now, I've showed my launch parameters a lot. My launch pattern, I get to 200 meters per second, and then I make my gravity turn to the 90-degree mark on the nav ball, which is to the right. And that's pretty much how I do it. So that's why I sped it up in this case. It's not really necessary to see it, but in case you wanted to, it's really sped up right here. I believe this is 4 times speed or something right above that. But this launch vehicle is pretty stereotypical for what I do. It's probably one of my better launch vehicles, as it leaves absolutely no debris in any orbit. So this has a launch stage that has 6 external boosters that are fueled by 2 of the larger sized fuel tanks, and then we have ourselves some LV, whatever those are. They're the thrust vectoring engines, and it's the same one that is hooked to the main craft. And with this main craft, we also have ourselves fuel lines feeding fuel in, so we can do our asparagus staging and get all that done. And then that stage that we're on right now, after the external boosters are spent, is used for orbital maneuvers and then for the first half of our trans-lunar injection. So right here, I believe we've already ditched it, have we not? Yes, we have. It's already been ditched, and now we are ready to make our burn out to the moon, our very first moon landing, conducted by none other than Union Jebediah Kerman, of course. He is the man, and if you're curious right now and you're looking at this engine and you're thinking, what in the world is this? That is no normal KSP engine. Well, you, sir and or madam, are most definitely correct. That is a KW Rocketry engine, and I actually know the name now. In one episode where I was using it, I completely forgot the name, and I called it the Wildcat, which was quite ignorant of me because that is not what it's called at all. It is called the Tesla engine, and it is a good engine for interplanetary maneuvers, as its ISP is decent and it gets some good fuel. What would you call that? Fuel efficiency, the miles per gallon, the meters per second that you can get from it for the efficiency is very good, and ever since I found out about it while using the KW Rocketry pack, it has always been my interplanetary stage before I unlock the nuclear engines and such. So I will live and die by the Tesla. In this case, we are going out to the moon living and then returning with science, but of course the science is what speaks for us, not a live Kerbal. I mean, if we didn't have remote tech, we could just be transmitting all this stuff back, but no. If 0.23 science wasn't already hard enough with transmitting science being a drastically reduced value, well, let's take it up a notch and give ourselves remote tech. And if you used earlier versions of remote tech, you may be thinking, you dummy, you still can transmit back science, you, sir, are silly. Well, no, I'm just going to have to throw your logic in your face, because unfortunately, now you have to have a direct connection with mission control, or the big red dot on the map if you didn't know it's mission control. You have to have a direct connection to transmit science. So yeah, even with science being a whole lot less of a value now, it is now even harder to transmit it, let alone get the science that you probably deserve for it. But aside from my ranting now about science being kind of flip-flapped, it's not really flip-flapped so much so as made more difficult. I wouldn't say realistic. Well, yeah, it is actually more realistic. I mean, you can't just transmit back a sample from the moon. It doesn't work that way. But bringing back science is a new part of the game that I kind of like and kind of dislike, and remote tech strengthens that, definitely, of the latter, so it makes it very hard. So returning from planets with all your science and such is very crucial to getting your science and all the points for researching junk. Anyways, we are out at the moon now. I completely skipped over the Hoffman transfer and then our orbiting burn. Well, we're here in a relatively low orbit. I believe this orbit does not peak above 30,000 meters. This is quite picturesque of the Apollo 10 mission, which orbited the moon at record lows, or you normally say record highs, but record lows, as it was orbiting, I believe, just above 15 kilometers above the surface of the moon, which was very new, very revolutionary, and it was setting the stage for Apollo 11. Now, I was trying to find the spot that mirrored the Sea of Tranquility the best on the KSP's version of the moon, which was where the Apollo 11 mission landed. It was in the Sea of Tranquility, which was this, I'm not sure if it resembles a lake bed, if you will, if the moon ever had lakes, which I doubt it did, but it resembled a lake bed. It was a flat land, and it was called the Sea of Tranquility. And then I believe Apollo 12 landed in the Sea of Storms. I believe it's something like that. It's Storm something. It may not be Sea of Storms. I apologize if I'm getting that incorrect. But I tried to land in this lake bedish area. So that was what looked like the Sea of Tranquility to me. And I said, close enough, Union Jeb. Are you ready to go? And he said, wah, 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 wah. If that's a Kerbal language. I'm not sure what the Kerbal language is. Perhaps introducing the Kerbal mod or the chatter mod. Yes, that will help us find out what the Kerbals really say. But until then, Jebediah is just smiling inside his capsule because he is ready to go, and he is ready to be the first Kerbal to land on the moon, returning the record amount of science for that time. And as we are I was about to say we were going to do something else. I was going to say something about Jebediah. But no, that is not in order. But as we are beginning our burn to bring us down onto the surface, or just completely eliminate our delta V, our velocity in general, this stage is what I usually use to deorbit and just kind of get us to a hovering stance above the surface of whatever we may be landing on. I don't know if this works too well, this rocket build, that is for interplanetary transfers. You'll need a lot more fuel for that. I believe this rocket is capable of an escape trajectory. However, much more than that is probably not that good or efficient. So hold off on that if you're planning on getting KW Rocketry. Just try and get your nuclear engines. That makes everything so much more efficient, even though they're not required. You can use the thrust vectoring engines, or just the counterparts of the thrust vectoring engines. I always get their names wrong because I don't refer to them enough. But yeah, if you want to use those for an interplanetary transfer, there we go, those would be more efficient, and I'm sure you could get a little bit more delta V out of it than just this little Tesla engine. But this Tesla engine is being a good boy right now, or girl. It's not really doesn't have a gender specificity. It's an engine, yes. And it is helping us eliminate our delta V and our velocity, so we are able to land on the moon. And this stage, of course, creates no space junk because it is going to slam right to the surface of the moon. Now, what happens when I decouple this stage is you'll see, but I get kind of scared because when it hits the ground, well, it doesn't go bouncing, nor does it destroy itself. It's not obliterated in a realm of fire. It lands very close to me, and I was a bit worried. I saw it hit, and I thought, oh, but right here I'm just judging the shadow, thinking, oh, well, how close are we to the real surface? Because 2,000 meters isn't the real surface. We've got a bit more, or a bit less, rather. But it hits the ground, goes on a little bounce, and then says, hey, guess what? I want to be here. And I say, well, I guess so, son, but you're going to have to move. And he says, so we do a little bit of moving here, and we land within meters of it. It's so close, but here we are landing in the Sea of Tranquility. Here we go. It's Ocean of Storms. That's what it's called, not Sea of Storms. Ocean of Storms. If I got that incorrect earlier on, I just had a bit of an epiphany. But anyways, we have landed on the moon. I probably should have held my random note about the moon topography, or the geography rather, until after we landed. But we landed! And now we are collecting all of our frivolously earned science, because it was a struggle getting out here. Or was it? Do I just want to make it sound like a struggle so this science is more well-earned? Well, it wasn't necessarily difficult, but it just takes time to get out here. I mean, getting out to the moon, even doing it fast, can take 15 to 20 minutes, and some people just don't have 15 to 20 minutes in their days. And I just thought, well, we're going to be doing this a whole lot more times because the moon has biomes, and biomes contain science-specific, achievements or unlockables. So, for example, where we land right here, I think this is the southeast crater. I'm not sure if that was what it was called, but it was something like that. We'll see right here when we get the surface sample. It'll say where it's specifically from. However, each biome of the moon will give you different science values, even if you've already reaped science values of the biome adjacent to it. So let's say you're in the Midlands biome, you get all the science from there, you transmit it back, and then you come back to the moon and you go to the Highlands. Well, you're going to still get your full science value, because you have not harvested that science yet. Now, oh, I didn't see it real quick. I'm looking at a very little monitor here, so let's just take a look really close. Sony Vegas, let me look, because if I project this to an external monitor, it will stop recording. I have found that out, so maybe that's just a bug on my part. But anyways, it's a struggle nevertheless. So Jebediah decides to try out his brand new jetpack christened just for this mission, and he goes and hops on a spent fuel tank. Well, I guess this couldn't be any problem. I mean, it just did explode and all. Sure, rocket fuels and all that volatile, right? Right? Well, maybe the fuel inside the fuel tanks has been completely depleted. But what about the fumes, Jebediah? Pfft, who cares? They'll fall out into the atmosphere. What atmosphere? This is a vacuum. Ugh. Maybe I shouldn't be jumping on this after all, but too bad, I already did it. And after much jumping and much science gathering and a little bit of stargazing, we make our way back home. Now, I believe at this point, I've recorded quite a few episodes ahead, and I believe in all, I've landed on the moon in this series. This will be our first of many landings. However, I think in all I landed on it about 6 times in a different biome for each, so I think that'll be the end of our science adventures, and then I end up launching a probe out there just to be a little bit of a transit base, just to be able to transmit signals from the surface, and has some gigantor solar rays, and that really helps things in the power and such, because we don't quite have those isotonium, those power generators that don't need sun. They just generate power out of thin air from depleted isotopes of uranium or whatever it may be. I think it's plutonium. Something like that. But anyways, we begin our burn to escape the mun and then come back to Kerbin. A very frivolous burn, but the way I have this rocket built, most of our landing stage is used in the return trajectory, and then just in case we want to slow ourselves down when coming back to Kerbin. So most of our interplanetary stage that helps do the Hoffman transfer, the one with the Tesla engine, it does most of our burn in space, interplanetary travel, and then deorbiting, and then cutting all of our velocity out. And then, the landing stage, as it, would be named for landing, is more or less just for burning back. But hey, if we were to go true Apollo style, we would have to make ourselves a rendezvous module, so our orbiting module, and then we'll have to have our landing craft, which would be this beautiful thing you are seeing right here, but that would take too much time, and at this point I didn't have docking nodes unlocked, so we were a bit out of luck when it came to that. But at this current status of the game, of where I am in the science quest, I have myself docking nodes, so maybe we could get started on, who knows, a Apollo-esque mission, perhaps for our Apollo 15, where we bring ourselves out with a rover, because I have a rover mod installed. Now, it's going to be highly ironic the way we do this, because this mod uses the Russian Lunkerhold. I'm pronouncing it with a German accent, but it's something like that. It was a part of the Luna missions, the Luna 17 specifically, that brought the rover out and had a little platform that deployed it, and then that rover did its stuff on the surface. So I believe that the Luna 17 rover, the rover that was specifically mounted for it, the Luna 17 was the mission, but there was the Lunkhold rover that was the first rover ever made in history. So we'll be sending out an Apollo mission with a Lunkhold rocket, or rover rather, strapped to the side. So a little Russian technology for an most American of all missions. So if you don't feel like your day is ironic enough, well, there you go. That's a forthcoming mission. Anyways, we actually do manage to come back very close to mission control. I believe this is the closest I've ever come back near mission control from any interplanetary mission. I've gotten close coming back from, I believe it was Elu. That was just a complete fluke, but it happened, and it was fantastic. I'm really glad that happened. Not because I'm good at calculating things, but just because it was lucky and I don't have to swim as far. Because, oh, you thought the Navy came out and picked up the Apollo missions. Okay. No, they swam. They swam all the way in their clunky spacesuits. Was the water cold? Well, I'm sure it was, but it was the victory that heated their souls. But no, the Navy actually did come up and pick them out. As a matter of fact, they made such a big perimeter around these guys. They had aircraft carriers, a couple destroyers, and then they sent out some helicopters to pick up these guys. They were well protected because what if the Russians had gotten a hold of the Apollo astronauts? They could revoke their passports and make sure they never go back to the moon again. So that could have been a thing, but no, the Navy did their job and they got our guys out of there. So fantastic. Our astronauts came back, did their stuff, and then were able to tell the tale afterwards. But we're just doing some science research here, just buying into the chain a bit more. And I'm not sure, I believe this is the stage where I buy the better electronics, the better photovoltaic cells, or no, I buy the little mini engines because I wanted to do that. I guess I felt like sending out a probe or something. I believe this was the mission preemptive to when I started launching up all the geostationary probes that would relinquish, or not really relinquish, but they would transfer signals between each other, but I had the orbital period slightly off, so they've caught up on each other and they're now in a bit of a clump, so they're not doing their job specifically. But hey, we're back at the moon because, hey, why not? And there's trenches I see, and trenches I land in. Now, I did not bring out Jebediah again. I made sure to switch out my pilots here. I believe Bill is on this mission, Mr. Bill Kerman, and next will be Bob. Now, I'm yet to kill a Kerbal in this series, and I hope to keep it that way. Now, if you can spot the difference between the Apollo 11 and the Apollo 12 mission, please, by all means, let me know right here. Ah, yes, you saw it. It was the little radar dish, because beforehand we came with no, and I mean absolutely no, communications devices. So we couldn't even tell jokes back and forth during the Hoffman transfer. But as contrary to the Apollo 12 mission landing in the Ocean of Storms, right now we are landing in some sort of a trench. Now, I'm not sure what this biome was called. This may have actually been the Southeast Crater. It's something interesting, but look right in the background while I mess up names. We can see the planet Kerbal glistening with its nice clouds and its city lights, as brilliantly added by the city visual enhancements mod. Yes, I love that mod. It adds no parts. It adds nothing else besides the voluptuousness, which is the visual effects. So that's my kind of thing right there. And we also added lights on the mission as well, if that's a big game changer. We always land on the light side, but I brought lights just in case we really wanted to shed some light on the situation. But I brought this really clunky radar dish because I wanted to try and make communications with mission control and see if it would really do anything. But since we didn't quite have the better photovoltaic cells, the ones that extend out rather than the ones we just kind of keep on the sides that are, just glued to the side of the command module, we just have to hack it because we do not have enough power to power the dish and then send back science. We would completely exhaust everything and we would lose control of the vessel because remote tech does that, and we'd be stranded here even though we have a man in the capsule, even though power is being generated. So that would be a thing, and that's something I avoided once I noticed that the power was depleting quickly. Now, during the second moon landing here, we are using a lot more of our landing stage than we did with the previous launch. Now, I'm not sure if this is where things start getting laggy. Now, I installed a mod. It was the Soviet pack, which added in a lot of the cool Soviet stuff, like the Mir space station, and added in some of the Soyuz stuff and that stuff, the Salyuts, and I really wanted to enjoy working with those. However, whenever I tried to EVA an astronaut or a Kerbonaut, they would immediately die. They would just puff. I don't understand why. It just kind of happened with the Russian or the Soviet pack rather, so I just had to ditch that pack overall. But it had some really cool rockets with it. It had an authentic Soyuz, complete launch, the lateral boosters and everything, and I thought that was impressive. But right here with the landing, even more impressive than the solid rocket boosters was that landing and how it managed to stay upright, even though I thought I was going to have to abort, do a quick launch, and then come right back to it. But we did not. We just had a bit of a shake, and then Bill had to balance himself on the opposite side, and that was that. So here we are attempting to time warp so we can get communication with mission control, and you can see my power depleting consistently. Just look at that, almost out of power. And I just think, oh, screw it, we might as well just turn off that dish and get out and stand on the surface, eh? No, let's just mess with radar dishes because that's why we came to the moon in the first place. Not that we already knew what was going on with radars, but because we just wanted to mess around with them at very far distances. I mean, perhaps we could try and make an order to the local fast food joint from the moon, maybe a little while before we get there and get our food. It'll probably be a a little cold, but hey, you made an order from the moon, and that's something you can say that the Russians can't, and that's the space race in a nutshell. Hey, guess what? I just ordered something from eBay. From the moon, wah wah wah, and that's how you win the space race. You just one up somebody. It's kind of like a presidential debate. A presidential debate in a sense. It's a battle of you suck and you suck with partial victories here and there. But let's see here. I don't remember what I wrote on this flag, as I probably recorded this over 2 weeks ago, but I've just now gotten around to recording it. And speaking of getting around to recording it, it's almost 20 minutes in, and I have not mentioned that today is a snow day. In South Carolina, it snowed, and even more impressive than it's snowing, it's stuck to the ground. So we got out of school around noonish, and I was just fooling around on Photoshop in my Photoshop class, and all of a sudden, hey kids, go home, it's kind of cold. And I said, all right, let's go home and have some fun. So I'm here sitting in my room. It's very chilly. It's about 55 degrees because I enjoy the cold so much. I left my window open. Well, snow is probably blowing in on my windowsill at the moment. But anyways, let's just fly through invisible rocks, while we talk about the snow. Because snow days in South Carolina are something of a seldom nature. I mean, snow in South Carolina is like gun control in Texas, both of which rarely happen. I'm pretty sure gun control in Texas is never going to be a thing. If I offended you from Texas and you're a gun control advocate, I apologize. Let's just focus on the core of this mission, which is landing man on the moon and then trying to waste power by transferring signals back. Now, I already did the return trip and everything. We got our science, so I just decided to cut that off, which is why this really awkward crossfade is going to be us landing back. I apologize if you wanted to see the whole return. I just decided to cut it out because we've already seen that kind of stuff. So we are back and we are getting more science. So much science that we are able to buy just about 1 or 2 things in the tech tree every time, which is rather impressive as you go on because things start to cost a heck load of science. So anyways, we get back and we decide to buy ourselves photovoltaic cells, which will aid us in our very next Apollo mission. But that's all for this episode of Interstellar Odyssey, everybody. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.